Hey, everyone, it's Leah. Welcome to another episode of It Might Be You. And I have a special guest with me today, Shawna Bigby-Davis. How are you doing today?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to get into it today.
I
So,
am too.
share a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I am a wife, I am a mom, and I'm an entrepreneur. And I would say that actually I'm an entrepreneur first, and I always have been. I'm headstrong, and I'm also somebody who has three autoimmune issues, and fourth, if you include Epstein-Barr virus. And so my new passion is helping women heal from burnout and autoimmune issues, specifically go-getter, driven, A-type personalities who give it all and leave themselves behind.
Mm, Yes, I can understand that A type. So,
Right? The perfectionist.
oh my God, yes. I say I'm a recovering perfectionist. It's a work
Me
in progress.
too.
Yeah, it's a work in progress, but I'm working on it.
Yeah.
So, what was your "it might be me" moment? What was that situation that made you stop and change tracks?
Yeah. So, Leah, my journey was kind of unfolded very quickly. To backtrack, I worked in advertising and marketing for 20 years, and 15 of that was at the world's top agencies. And I was a creative director. And for any of you who work in marketing or advertising or design, it's a very male dominated space. And so for 15 years of my career, I took on a lot of male characteristics, including forgetting about self care, self deprecating, clawing at other women because there was only one seat at the table. And that basically left me very numb and very really insecure about who I was, but also incredibly driven. And the last 5 years of my career, I started an agency of my own, and we were successful very quickly. And so we went out on our own. I specifically started this business because I had a child at a 1 year old. And I thought, wow, I can't have somebody else controlling my destiny anymore. Like I have to take control of that. And it used to be that I traveled several weeks out of the month. And so I was like, well, I can't do this with a child. So what if I built my own business and created the life that I wanted to? And while that thought is really great, I took with me a lot of baggage and a lot of characteristics that I've been holding on for a long time. And I created a beautiful business and we were successful really quickly. However, there was suddenly I found myself with 24 employees and managing a really large client roster and just really just trying to keep up with that plus my family life. And who takes the back seat? We take the back seat, especially as women, especially as nurturers, especially as caregivers, right? And especially somebody who had shed my feminine qualities for a long time. And so I started becoming literally crippled. I had a hard time holding a coffee cup. I couldn't hold a pen. I couldn't hold a toothbrush. I couldn't hold a hairbrush. I broke every single glass, plate, anything in the house that could break, I broke. And it was just because it would slip out of my hands. And it got to the point where I could only go into the office maybe 3 days a week and then maybe 2 days a week. And then in order just to get out of bed, I was taking fistfuls, like 12 Advil at a time. And that was just so I could walk. And what's really interesting is I knew that it was accelerating really quickly, this feeling of exhaustion and bloat and fatigue and brain fog. And I kept having breathing problems also. So I kept going to urgent care centers and emergency rooms and spending the night. And I went to 12 different specialists, and all of them told me the exact same thing, which was go do some more alms, relax. You're clearly just panicked, and there's nothing wrong with you. Your labs are completely normal. You're just being a hysterical female. And this made me sad. This made me depressed. This made me frustrated. And ultimately, I thought, oh, well, if everybody thinks I'm crazy, then I must be crazy. So I just stopped telling people about how I felt and just lived with the pain. And like I said, just swallow my Advil and try and like shuffle through the day. And one day, this is my moment. We were redoing some stuff in our house. I'm sorry, we were redoing a pool outside rather. And the pool had cracks. It needed to be fixed. We fixed that. And when we dug up a bunch of concrete, there were all of these crickets underneath the concrete. And the crickets all, for whatever reason, scurried into our house. So there was always these like crickets in the house, and you're like walking through, and then they just like dozens of crickets would like run away from you. It was a gross, ridiculous scenario. And I was at my wit's end. I'm not sleeping. I'm exhausted. I'm losing hair in clumps, right? I can barely hold a pen. I'm at, like when you're spinning a lot of pain plates inside of your brain, there's not a lot of space for anything else. And these crickets were going to be my demise. And so my daughter and I were catching crickets, and we were sticking them inside of a bucket, and I'd put the bucket on top of them, and I'd say, don't touch this bucket. And she's 5, right? And she accidentally kicked over the bucket, and all of these crickets come running out, and I lost it. I suddenly had like the strength of 10 men. I picked up the bucket, I threw it against the wall, I smashed it. And I looked at my daughter, and I'm like spewing explicatives, right? I'm just cussing at the universe. I'm angry. I'm angry about not crickets. I'm angry about like my body and my frustration and just everything that's happening. And I look at my daughter who's 5, and she's terrified. She's standing there and she's shaking, and her eyes are as big as saucers. And I realized that she's terrified of me right now. Terrified. And I was like, oh, I gotta get this under control, right? Because my actions have effects on her, and everything I do in this life is for her. So now I'm going to make her crazy and put up with pain and just like teach her how to explode when it all becomes too much. And at that very moment, it was like clarity, and I realized that I needed to get help. So I tucked her into bed. I calmed her down. I tucked her into bed. I kissed her. And then I went into my room and I Googled for hours. And I just happened to come up with the right keyword search. And for 12 years, I'd been experiencing symptoms. And at that moment, I found one instance of what might be happening to me. And it said rheumatoid arthritis, autoimmune disease. And when I read the words autoimmune disease, something inside me rung like a bell. And I was like, oh my God, I have an autoimmune disease. My very next thought was, does that mean I have AIDS? I literally did not know that an autoimmune disease meant something else. I just knew, what AIDS was. Growing up in the 80s, I understood very, very little. And so many people have been telling me that I was crazy. So I was like, well, I'm going to go to my doctor and I'm going to ask, can I get an autoimmune disease test? Yeah. And I did, and it came back positive that I had 3 autoimmune diseases.
Oh my God.
And for the first time in my life, I felt validated. I felt like I wasn't crazy. I felt like, okay, this is like, now I have a diagnosis. Now I know what to do. Now I can like run my path. But that moment, going back to my daughter, seeing her fear also made me realize like I was teaching her how to put up with pain, how to put up with crappy people, how to put up with tugs on my time and still give to people. And I was like, no, that I don't get to teach her that. A lot of, like she may end up being an A-type anyway, just because she's near me and around me. And I'm really trying my hardest to recover from this perfectionist syndrome. However, it's given me life. And what I realized is I needed to get out of that business. And I sold my business 4 months later. I was like, I got to get out and I got to heal. And I've spent the last 4 years working on myself, mind, body, and spirit. And I actually have completely reorganized my life around this illness. It's now my superpower. And my wellness practice has fit right into my new business. And so, helping women is my goal in life and my love in life, and anything that I can impart to them to heal them, both mind, body, and spirit is what I do now.
Awesome. And I guess like listening to that validation, finally somebody's listening. I have come across so many women who have had ailments and they'll go to the doctor and they're shut down.
Oh, absolutely.
It happened to me when I was in my 20s. That, well, you don't know what you're talking about. And at the time, I was a nurse. Of course, I know what I'm
You're
talking about.
kidding.
Yeah, but it was still, you don't know what you're talking about. No, that's not right. And so I suffered in silence. That was my private struggle for 8 months until I went to the right doctor, and they were like, "Why did you let it go so long? You know better than this." Well, I tried, but I was shut down and told I was wrong. So
We do that as women, don't we? We accept authority as the truth.
yeah,
And frankly, that is something that I work really hard on, especially with women, is like, just because somebody tells you something and you have a history of authority and taking that, like, we got to break that down, because frankly, like, they're not serving you.
no, and it didn't serve me. So
No.
for months, and I still deal with the same problem to this day. You're talking about 15, 16 years later. So I was right. I knew what I was talking about. But like you said, I was thinking I dumbed myself down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm only, I'm a baby, and this is a doctor, so she
Mm-hmm.
must know what she saw. And it was a woman doctor who shut me down.
So interesting.
So yeah, it was very interesting. And the funny thing, to end this story up and tidy it up, was I didn't let her know that I was a nurse. I didn't feel like it was necessary. But she ended up having a patient on my floor one night, and I worked pediatrics. And when she seen me, I just seen the light go off. Oh, she did know what she was talking
Mm.
about. And so, that was kind of my validating moment that, okay, yeah, I'm not just going to come in here and make stuff up. But it's just um, unfortunate that women have to, I hate to use the word beg, but you almost do beg and plead to somebody listen. There's something wrong. I know my body. Um, I'm not making this up. I need help. And it doesn't happen in a timely manner. And so then you're forced to suffer. And then the people that watch you the most see you doing this. And it's just a perpetual pattern.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy that you realize that, because some people don't realize that they're imprinting those behaviors on their babies.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, yeah.
Oh my goodness. I was just talking to a client of mine, and she was talking about she wants a divorce badly. And she's like, well, I don't want my baby to come from a broken home, so I think I'll just stick it out. I'm like, okay, so you're going to teach her instead to stay miserable and to stay small and to stay in a place that doesn't feel good, safe, comfortable, and to fight against your own intuition? Is that what you want to teach her?
Yeah.
Right? These are questions we have to ask ourselves, especially as moms, right? Like really evaluate what are the silent lessons that we are teaching our children.
Because those are the most important ones.
Absolutely.
You don't
Yeah.
even realize it. They'll come later on and say, well, the reason, I know, just speaking from my experience, stuff that happened in my childhood, and having to have those hard conversations with my mother now. Hey, I internalized that. I believe that because, like in the Black community, when trauma happens, the response is, oh, let's just pray. Get it,
Mm,
we can pray it away. Um, and that didn't serve me or anybody else in the situation. And so when stuff started manifesting itself in my life as an adult, then I'm having to deal with all this stuff that I didn't even realize I had internalized from a very young age.
yes.
It was those silent lessons, like for my mom, I think it was a hard pill to swallow when I told her I didn't want to go to her, being the perfectionist and the type A type, because I didn't want to have to deal with women tears. Like, that's not what I needed from you at that point. I needed to see strength. I didn't need for you to, I looked at tears and her crying as a weakness,
Mm-hmm.
which it's not. I know that now. But um, when you're dealing with trying to grow up and dealing with any type of emotional trauma, the last thing you want to see is someone crying over it. And it's like, I'm not crying, so why are you? And so I held on to all that. And then when it decided to push forward and push out, it wasn't a pretty sight. So yeah, I'm so happy that, like I said, you seen it early on, because I've seen the damage, that those silent lessons can inflict on babies, early on, and they don't even realize how it just follows them through life.
Well, let's talk about that because I think this is a huge, first of all, it's my favorite thing to talk about.
Uh,
uh, and two, it's really something that I think a lot of people don't understand, especially, so you said you're a Black woman in a Black community. Under, so by 2020 standards, there's 50 million Americans who have an autoimmune disease. 75 to 80% of those are women. Most of them are Black, Latina, or some other minority and or underrepresented uh, race. And so what happens is trauma. I don't know. Have you ever heard of ACEs?
no. Mm-mm.
Okay, so I think this is really important. So over 90% of people who have an autoimmune issue, most likely they have experienced an ACE, which is a, uh, a trauma when you're a child,
Mm.
adverse child experience. And so depending on how many of these traumatic experiences you have, if you've had a lot of them, or maybe, so like you can have there's big T trauma and little T trauma. So big T trauma is like an accident, a rape, war, something really big. Little T trauma is like somebody constantly emotionally abusing you, or there's maybe poverty or lack of, like maybe there's food scarcity, right? These are like little tiny traumas, but they add up. The big T traumas are actually easier to get over than the little T traumas. And the little T traumas, what they do is it's like soul cutting. And they just tiny little cuts, tiny little paper cuts over time. And what happens is they become something really large. Ultimately, in the future, they usually become an autoimmune issue. Now, does this mean that because you had trauma, you're going to end up with an autoimmune issue? No. You have to have a predisposition to have an autoimmune issue. But if you have an autoimmune issue, most likely you had some sort of traumatic experience when you were a child. And I'm talking about like 7, 9, or younger. And so these communities that are affected the most are the people who are struggling the most, and the people who are marginalized or underrepresented, or they're struggling for, like I said, for jobs, or there's maybe a lot of violence. This is a really big deal. And so we go to talk therapy to try and like reduce this trauma, right? The thing is, talk therapy doesn't work, because inside our brain can make lots and lots of stories, and we can make lots and lots of connections, but it stays inside of our brain. That trauma is locked in our cells. And the way to move through it, the way to push through it, is like to do physical activities. But you have to do physical activities, like not just like mowing your lawn and like doing gardening. Is this going to work? You actually have to do some guided meditations where you're thinking about the feeling of what happened to you, and then you push through it in your body. But this is a way for you to heal. This is a way for you to exercise and liberate yourself and take your power back. Talking about it with your girlfriends, maybe that feels good for 10, 15 minutes. It doesn't reduce it at the cellular level. It still hangs out there. And that's something that we got to do as women, is like come together, teach each other this stuff, and then we've got to help push it through. We can't just sit there and like kibitz and talk anymore. Like we actually got to get up and move and dance and like create experiences that heal.
Yeah. And, you just touched on something, because from, like, I call 0 to 7 the imprinting stage.
Absolutely.
And during those very formative years, that's kind of when you start developing who you are, who you're going to become. And that was when my significant ACE would have happened. I was molested for years.
Wow.
And so with that, I adopted an identity that I didn't even know that I had until I was 30 something, which was, I said I went to talk therapy, I went to sex therapy, I did all these things, and even more, and I could not let go of this vice grip
Yes.
that was just right in the middle of my chest. And I
Yes.
figure out I had 3 or 4 different talk therapists, and it was always the same thing. Intellectually, I know it's not my fault.
Nope.
I get that. I know that. But what I need to know is, how do I get rid of the pain?
Mm-hmm.
I'm tired of living with this.
Mm-hmm.
And, therapy is set up in a way that you'll never be done.
Oh, right.
I, I don't want to have to keep going. Like, give me a tool that's going to help me push through, like you said. And fortunately, I came across that tool on accident, because I was in a funk that I could not get myself out of for 2 years.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I kept noticing I had a pattern. Um, something would happen, and I would go into a funk for a year or two and just shut down and had no motivation. And when I realized that, I was like, okay, I need to figure out something different, and I
Mm-hmm.
was open to trying other things. And I think a lot of women, or just people in general, are scared to open up and try new things because of it's the fear of the unknown.
Oh, absolutely.
And you're right. When you're holding on to those traumas,
Yes.
they are ingrained. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they have rooted themselves.
Mm-hmm. At a
And
cellular level, they're like hanging on.
oh yeah, and there's no amount of talking that's going to help you push
No.
through that. I mean, don't get me wrong, that is one part of it. You can go, but sometimes you have to. I have a girlfriend who's a amazing um, social worker, but her whole practice is, oh, I'm gonna fix you. I'm gonna help get you where you need to be in 3 days. If you can't get this done in 3 days, I don't know what's going on. You're choosing to hold on to it. And so when she told me that, I was just like, how? How do you do that? But she incorporates so many different other modalities into what she does.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, you just touched on something with that cellular level. Like, I
Yes.
didn't even think about the cellular level. I was just thinking, I think more of the lines of the subconscious and the identities that we adopt from traumatic experience and things. And I was like, if you can fix or identify the identity that you adopted at whatever point and reconcile that, then it's just a trickle effect. But I didn't think that explains a lot, the cellular level thing, because I am a huge believer in the mind body.
Mind body. Yeah. I mean, there's an enormous, you've heard of the vagal nerve, maybe. Vagal nerve is a nerve bundle that connects the stem of your brain to your stomach. The cells that are in our brain are the same kind of cells that are in our stomach lining. And when we talk about this vagal nerve, it's 90% down, and I'm sorry, 90% up, 10% down. What I mean by that is, when we think, we actually think in our belly first, and then 10%, like I said, 90% of the information goes up. We go back up to our brain. We like fact check that, because there's only 10% nerves going down to our brain, or basically the brain is just saying yes, no, right? So like, yes, I agree with you, or no, I don't agree with you. And it sends it back down. So when we're having a gut feeling, if you're having flutters, if you're like in love, if you're like, if somebody walks in the room and suddenly you're like, you got um, hairs up on your arm, or they don't make you feel good, like, you listen to that, because your gut knows more than anything else. Our brains are tricky, and we give them way too much control over what we do, because our entire brain, going back to what you were saying just a minute ago, our entire brain wants to keep us safe. It wants to keep us in the cave, away from lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. And it's trying to create safety at all times. And it will fool you into thinking that you are safe, because it doesn't want to go into the unknown. You said that women often stay because they're in a place where they're like, I don't want to move into a space that is scary, because I don't know what's going to happen. That is your brain keeping you safe. And this happens again, even in domestic violence situations where a woman is being battered and beaten and bruised, or maybe she's even just being verbally abused. Her brain is telling her that it is scary to walk away from the situation because she doesn't know what's going to happen on the other side. So she will stay there because her brain has convinced her that this is safer than something unknown. And that's your brain tricking you.
It is. And you just touched on something, because even with that, just, I hate to say that my brain, it is. The subconscious always wants to keep you safe. Um, and even after, you're talking about 10 years, I had another incident that happened to me 10 years ago. One of the defense mechanisms with that particular situation was, oh, I'm going to put weight on you, because if you're overweight, you're not going to be attractive.
Mm-hmm. Isn't
And
that funny how you do that? Like subconsciously?
subconsciously, that's what happened. So I look back now and I'm like 10 years later, and I've gained not 10 pounds, I've gained over 100 pounds.
Mm.
And it does not
The
want to let
shield.
go. Yeah, it is. And it's, even though I've been 10 years removed from that, and I'm in a
Yeah.
happy marriage, I'm in I have a happy life, but my subconscious mind is still wanting to keep me safe.
Yes.
It has not caught up with the fact that, oh, Leah's safe, she's happy. Let's let her release this
And it
extra.
won't be until you tell it it's safe and cut that HPA access. HPA access is basically where your body continues to like release adrenaline, cortisol, neoprenephrine, right? To keep you in this like, I gotta go phase. If you access that too many times, what happens is your body gets stuck in it, right? And you get stuck in an anxiety cycle. So the only way, and you said it best, is like the only way that you can really truly break this is by creating safety.
Mhm.
And once you convince your little amygdala that you are safe, then can you move on to the next phase, which is like, I got to go do some somatic experiencing. Somatic just basically means like feel my body. And somatic experiencing can be done with a therapist. It can be done by aesthetic dancing. It can be done by doing some yoga, whatever it is that you want to do. But first, you have to create safety. So many people want to go and heal. They're like, oh, I'm going to do all this stuff. I'm going to do the breath work and the meditation, and I'm going to start doing my yoga. I'm going to I'm going to take some bubble baths. I'm going to do some me time. But they don't create safety first. And so they can't understand why all these different little things that they're doing for themselves aren't adding up to me being healthy. And it's because your body still thinks that you are in fight or flight.
And so, how do you start that process of creating that safe space to signal that, okay, hey, I'm safe. Let's turn off this fight or flight response.
Yeah. So you have to do it in really, really small increments, especially if you've had traumatic experiences. Because if you go whole hog, which let's be clear, a lot of us are like all or nothing, we're black or white, right? We're like, I'm going all in. This has to be done in tiny little increments. I'm talking like 30 seconds to 3 minutes, period. And what you got to do is create safety for yourself by first learning to trust yourself. First of all, somewhere along the way, you stop learning how to trust yourself. We all do it, especially as women. Oh, I listen to him and her and them because I don't trust myself anymore. So 30 seconds at a time, you can do a couple of things. You can listen to your favorite song in silence, somewhere really, really small and tight and feels cozy. And then I'm talking about like in a bedroom under a blanket, or maybe in a closet, some room that you can find a little bit of where people aren't touching you, seeing you, looking at you. And you listen to your favorite song and you just move your body. And by you saying like, I'm going to listen to my favorite song, you're saying like, I trust myself to pick the right song. It's a teeny tiny little stupid thing, but it sounds dumb. But and then the next step in that is, again, 30 seconds to 3 minutes. You have to keep promises to yourself. So you need to be aware of your language. What I like to do is write down one thing that I'm going to do for myself, and then I go back to that and I complete it. So for instance, like today, you just write down one thing. Today, I'm going to drink half a liter half a liter of water by noon. And by completing that one thing, you have told your body, like, I believe in you, I trust you, and you've built confidence in yourself. It's tiny, tiny little things. But it's a little bit like going to the gym. If you are out of shape, You don't go to the gym and straight up walk up to a 25-pound barbell. There's no
No.
way. No. You're going to go to the gym, and the very first thing you're going to do is pick up with that 1 pound, maybe 3 pound, right? So these tiny little exercises, and I can give you a couple more. These tiny little exercises, you're basically pulling reps. You're just doing reps, like a little, you're pulling up that 1 pound barbell, and you're just, doing a couple of reps on your arms. By doing these tiny little reps, your body's going to remember, like, oh, I know what's best for me. Oh, I actually know how to keep a promise to myself. Because when we keep promises to other people, we always keep them. When we make a promise to ourselves, it's very easy to break. Like, I'm going to go to bed early tonight. Oh, maybe not tonight because so-and-so needs help with their homework, or I'm going to help X, Y, Z, right? And then we go last on the list. By keeping teeny tiny little promises to yourself on the daily, you remember who you are, and you remember that you are worthy. And then you start building those things up more and more and more. And there's a couple of other things. Take a peek right now at yourself. If your hands are cold, if your feet are cold, you don't have circulation problems, you're stuck in fight or flight. Because the very first thing that your body does when it goes into fight or flight mode, fight, flight, or freeze, what it does is it cuts off all other extremities. It cuts off hair growth. It cuts off nail growth. It cuts off skin regeneration. And also it slows down circulation so it can give all of its adrenaline and attention other places. It also shuts down your digestion, right? So a lot of people who have trauma, a lot of people who have stress, have a lot of gut issues. They have a lot of weight issues. And it's because their gut has basically turned off because they're constantly stuck in fight or flight. So very quick way for you to check is my hands and feet cold. A way that you can turn this off, again, 1 minute, bend over and touch your toes. And if you can't touch your toes, that's fine. Just do as much as you can. By sitting in this pose for up to 60 seconds, you can't bend over and touch your toes for up to 60 seconds if you're running away from your tiger. So what happens is your amygdala says, oh, I must be in a safe place. I can calm down and I can turn off and I can chill out. So a couple times a day in between your Zoom meetings, or in between yelling at your kids, or in between grocery shopping, just bend down, touch your toes for 60 seconds and tell your amygdala, like, shh, I got you.
Yeah. See, and I wouldn't have known that. And I don't have any circulation problems that I know of. Not right now. My hands are good, but
Oh, bless you. I got all kinds of circulation problems.
so
I teach what I know.
yeah, and it's very, very helpful because I guarantee you, nobody knows this stuff. This is not stuff that we're readily taught or that's readily shared. Because I wouldn't have known, like, I've done a lot of change work. And then I keep looking back and it's just like, okay, so I've done all these changes. I'm definitely not the Leah that I was 2 weeks ago, let alone 6 months ago. So why hasn't my body caught up with my subconscious?
Yeah.
And it explains it that, okay, my body still may be, my subconscious mind does not trust me yet. That's what it is. And so this is just a realization for me that, that's what it is. I have not created that safe space.
Yes.
Sitting in the mirror, doing mirror work and all that is great.
Yes.
It's very, very cleansing. But that's that one step that I have not been practicing, which is the safety. And so I thank you for
You're
sharing
welcome.
that with me, because I would just kept going and running in circles.
Running in circles. And that's the thing is, so most people don't realize is that autoimmune and burnout recovery is very different than burnout and autoimmune. I just lost the word. Hold on a second. Let me re-say that. Burnout and autoimmune recovery is not the same as prevention. So prevention means I'm going to do self-care routines. I'm going to do my mirror work. I'm going to do my breath work. I'm going to do, I'm going to eat right. I'm going to treat, I'm going to do joy-based things.
Mm-hmm.
That's hashtag self-care. That's awesome. So you don't burn out. But if you are already burned out, if you're already in like borderline chronic illness, or you have a chronic illness, these steps will not help you until you create safety. You can do them all day long for years on end and make very little progress. As soon as you start creating safety for yourself and you physically start moving through your trauma and physically start moving through your stress, that's when the progress happens. And that's when that can happen in, like you said, 3 days. There's some really, I don't know how you feel about drugs or plant medicine therapies, but there's some incredible science that is about to come out. The FDA is about to approve in the next year trauma therapies that include taking different types of psychedelics, and they're microdoses of psychedelics, and they're treated with a psychotherapist. So this isn't just you tripping on mushrooms, right? Like in your living room, like this is you taking a plant-based medicine in a particular setting. But they've taken people, war veterans who have had decades of PTSD, and they've healed it within 4 treatments.
Wow.
This is amazing. This is what the world needs. And you're not addicted to, opioids. You're, everybody, because I've got 3 autoimmune issues, always wants to give me an autoimmune suppressant. I'm not interested in those drugs. I'm interested in healing my mind, body, and spirit to make me whole, not being hopped up on your drugs.
Yeah. And I completely agree, being someone that still have to be on 2 anti-inflammatory type drugs due to hives, unexplainable. Just I created, or not created, I said it. I manifested the dis-ease in my body, and I take responsibility for that. And just like you said, I'm interested in healing whatever it is that I created, so that I'm whole without having to take anti-inflammatories for the rest of my life. I don't
Absolutely.
And
LEAH, you said something real quick. I just need to say, so you mentioned you have hives.
yeah.
Our skin is our biggest barrier. That is our biggest shield. And that's where you've got hives. A lot of times that's a boundary issue, because our skin is our biggest boundary to everything else out in the world, right?
Yeah.
So when you've got eczema, psoriasis, or hives, it's typically a boundary issue.
Wow. And you know what? That when I developed this, I was working in a very toxic environment where I was constantly bombarded with sexual harassment and men making inappropriate comments about what I look like. And
That's got to
it
be triggering for someone who's got molestation in their background.
definitely, definitely. Um, because I was telling my husband, I was like, it just came up overnight. Like I never had um, any type of allergy to this degree. I knew I was, as a kid, I was allergic to strawberries, but it didn't have that type of effect, to the point where now I have to be on medication, and I've been on medication for 9 years since, that. So the fact that you said it's a boundary issue is, yeah. that, yeah.
But you're also leveling up. So let's give yourself some props, right? So every time that you level up, you've got to readdress your boundaries, because what your boundaries were 2 years ago were probably much looser than they are now, right? The new you every single week, like you shed all sorts of garbage and you regrow something beautiful inside you, right? Like you're this beautiful monarch butterfly, right? But every single time that you level up, you also got to level up your boundaries.
Yep. And see, sometimes, I say I'm the queen of boundaries, but I'm really not. Like, and it's been really eye opening for me to see how other people view me. It's like, you're too nice. You shouldn't be
Interesting.
this open up. And I'm like, you let them, because I'm somebody that says I don't let anybody run over me. And I don't, but then I do in little small ways. And that is where the breakdown starts to happen. And I'm someone that has to be very conscious of the energy of other people and the energy that I give out as well, because I get drained very easily, being around, I say, energy vampires.
Yes.
And last week, yes, literally last week, I had a massive hive um, outbreak, and I hadn't had one of those in years.
And was there a boundary leak?
Mhm. It was a boundary because I was staying. I was at a training, and my boundaries were not being honored, and I wasn't honoring it. Well, I'm not going to put it on other people, but I wasn't honoring myself.
Isn't it
And,
interesting?
yep. And now that you pointed that out, it's like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
that was.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, we are our own healers. We know the information. We have just forgotten how to trust ourselves. And most of the time, that's because, again, going back to those imprint years, we were told not to trust ourselves. We were told to either lie, keep it a secret, don't listen, you're too sensitive, or even terrible things like you're stupid or, you're worthless. These are things that teach you, like, oh, I shouldn't listen to myself. So that's the stuff that we have to overcome, and that's big, right? These aren't like little things. Like these are like deeply, embedded splinters that we have to go and find. And sometimes they're really, really small, but they fester and they cause a lot of damage. So we are our own best healers. We know, if we really are thinking about it, like who was the person who told you those things? And when did you make it believe, like, when did you make that part of your programming?
Yeah.
And where is it showing up in your life?
Yeah, exactly. And like, when did you decide to believe that and accept that? Um, I had one of those realization moments right around the time that I decided that I was worthy of being married to my husband. Um, During my imprint years, I was told no one would love me and all that, and if they know, uh, they'll think you're dirty and all these things. And I didn't know that it was going to cause such a issue. Um, when I got to that point where it was time for me to grow up and get married. So I had to do a lot of work to feel comfortable enough to even accept that, okay, yeah, this is a great guy um, that wants to marry me, and I am deserving of that.
Absolutely.
So it is a lot. And like the mind body connection is just astounding. The stuff that, as I learn more about it, it just makes so much sense, especially with you telling me about the boundaries.
Mm,
I never, I never would have put that together.
yeah. If you're interested, you should look up, and you can just follow some hashtags on Instagram if this is, your comfort level. But somatic experiencing is what we're talking about. Somatic experiencing talks specifically about how trauma embeds itself into the body and then how to release it. And it's one of the best books out there. Actually, there's a couple different books out there, but When the Body Says No is a fantastic book. Another one is called Waking the Tiger, and that's by Peter Levine. Dr. Peter Levine is basically the inventor of this field. And not only is the book written really simply, so you don't feel like you have to be a doctorate, but there's lessons at the end of every chapter that you can do yourself. And if you find that throughout that book, like, this is really making a difference and maybe I should reach out to a practitioner, there's lots of practitioners out there. So again, if you just want to like look up the hashtag somatic experiencing and just follow it for a little while on Instagram, you'll start to see, oh, wait a minute, they're talking about patterns that I actually have. And they offer insights that resonate so deeply that pretty soon it might become your obsession also. It might become your rabbit hole. But the healing properties of this are like, just can't be minimized, or I just can't I can't express enough like how much how important this stuff is.
Yeah. And just a little bit that you've shared with me, I want to go down the rabbit hole and I want to find out what in the world, what else am I holding on to that I can release to get this. Well, I just want to be aligned. That's the biggest
Yes.
thing. Alignment is so important. And if you're not aligned, that's when you're allowing dis-ease to come and flow. And I don't want to be that way, you know. And being aware is one thing, but actually finding tools and techniques that you can use is a whole nother. And so I just thank you for sharing these things because
You're welcome.
I'm going down the rabbit hole. I can tell you right now.
Yeah.
Find out because, like, I know doing all the work, the self care, going and doing all the change work that I've done, I have failed to create the safe place. And so
Yes.
for me to get completely aligned, I'm going to
And
have to.
ladies, we need that. We have felt unsafe. I mean, think about walking down the street,
Yeah,
right? Cat calls, like holding your keys a certain way. Like as women, we got to always have our guard up. Feeling safety is a really difficult thing to tap into. This is not going to come easy to most people.
yeah. And I know it's probably definitely not going to come easy to me because I guarantee you I've been in fight or flight for
Decades.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, decades. Just like not realizing that I was holding on to negative emotions for decades. And that was that vice grip that was keeping me stuck. You know, when I was able to reconcile and get to the root of it, yeah, I found my freedom. But I'm not completely free. And I know I'm a work in progress like everyone else. And so I'm not afraid to share um, that, you know, you can do all the things, but unless you're willing to learn and hold space with people that are willing to share important steps that you may be missing along the way, then you'll be stuck. And so, yeah, this is amazing information that you're sharing with us. And I
Well, thank
think,
you for inviting me on and letting me share. Um, I don't know if you are interested, but I have a podcast called The BS We Feed Ourselves, and it's about kicking the BS out of our minds and off of our plates so we can heal. And it's about that mind, body, gut connection that we just so often focus on. I just got to do, I got to like heal my brain in order to move on, or I just got to get the right diet dialed in and then I'll be fine. Right. Like everything's a balance. Everything's this delicate wheel and we all get to work together, but there's no yin without some yang.
mm, exactly, exactly. Because it's just stories that we tell each other, or, well, yeah, sometimes tell each other and tell ourselves. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, it's definitely important to hold these type of conversations, especially, you know, being a woman of color. This is not something that we talk about. You know, we don't talk about these things. And so, being that, I'm happy that I decided to create a platform where I can talk about it and learn because I wouldn't have known these things, you know, unless I opened myself up to learn. So, yeah, it's a lot. And I know, like, being um, or with the pandemic last year, mental health has been a big topic, a big, you know, button that everybody's been talking about because being stuck in your house and not being able to move and do all these things was causing a lot of mental health breakdown. I know, especially in the Black community. But like we discussed before, I have nothing against therapy. I've done it. But I also guess I want to encourage listeners to know that there are other modalities that you can, you know, practice. And one of which is what you've shared during this podcast that I didn't even know anything about. Um, there's just so much we don't know.
Yeah, you're right. And going back to, like you said, in your community, um, you know, hurt people,
Mhm.
but hurt people aren't bad people. Hurt people have just been marginalized, not listened to, you know, persecuted, and that's unfair. And that feeling of like, why am I not worthy enough to have all the things that everybody else has? adds up. And that's generational trauma that you're healing right now. And so I am clapping you up right now, because that generational trauma, you're going back, what, 8 generations healing something that's been woven into your DNA generation after generation. That is hard work.
Yeah. And it has
And it's
been.
beautiful work.
It is. It's eye-opening. I don't know if you've heard of time techniques,
No.
but well, it is one of the most illuminating techniques. That's what started me on my real journey of healing, and what helped me to release negative emotions. And one of the questions with time techniques is it generational,
Ooh.
or before your birth or after your birth? And one of the emotions that, I want to say it was sadness, that was stuck. My answer was it was generational.
Mm.
And you can travel back on your timeline. Um, it's like a gestalt line. And I remember it was just overwhelming when I did it. I remember seeing it was 4 generations back, and it was a slave and her child. I I knew it inherently. I didn't see features or anything like that, but I was like, okay, well, you have every right to be sad. you know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Feeling it. I didn't have to go and associate myself into the memory or anything like that, but just knowing that that's embedded in my DNA.
100% it's embedded in our DNA.
Yeah, and being able to heal that feeling was huge.
Mm.
And um, I have a cousin that joined me on my journey and um, of healing. We both started at the same time. We both are kind of at the impasse right now. And when I told her that, she was just like, like I don't believe in that type of stuff. I was like, but it's real. I'm telling you what just happened. She's like, yeah, it's like it wasn't. I didn't feel like it was a past life or anything for me. That was a generational thing that was going on inside of our bodies. We can't help but hold on to things, and so yeah, it's a lot. It is a lot, and I'm glad that, like I said, that we're able to have these conversations. And I'm hoping that more women will join together and have more of these type of conversations, and do the healing that needs to be done for ourselves and for the babies going forward. Just
That
imagine,
baby's going forward.
yeah, imagine 20, 30 years from now, if we continue down this path, some of the stuff that we've dealt with, our kids won't have to do. So
That's a dream.
yeah, it is a huge dream.
That is the dream.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
I mean, I really think that this pandemic is creating a global awakening for us. We're having to really look at ourselves in the mirror and deal with our junk. And some people are emphatically saying, I ain't doing it. And those are the people who are out marching and angry. you know, um, I'm not going to have my freedoms taken away, this, that, and the other. Like, those are the people who are just like, they're afraid to be with themselves and be with, what this pandemic is sort of backhanded a gift, right? Backhanded an opportunity for us to look at ourselves and grow. And so, like you said, if we can take a moment and bring someone along with us and find peace, find clarity, find safety, we can all heal.
For sure. So, what
Yes, ma'am.
advice would you give to the ladies listening to create um, peace and safety?
Yeah. So the very first thing, like I said, in any coaching that I do, it's create safety for yourself. And for safety, I'm sorry, for each person, safety looks a little bit different. So the first thing you need to identify is like, why don't I feel safe? And if you can't even get there because you've got so many layers of the onion Then, like I said, just doing things like bending over and touching your toes for 60 seconds to tell the amygdala to calm down. If you like weighted blankets, get yourself a weighted blanket. If you haven't tried them, they're wonderful for anxiety. You put a weighted blanket on your body. That weight literally tells your body that you're safe, and your amygdala quiets down. So find physical ways that you can create safety, and now find emotional ways that you can find safety. Emotional ways, again, you need to learn how to trust yourself, build tiny little promises, continue to follow through with those promises. Like, I'm going to wake up at 7:30. I woke up at 7:30. I'm going to drink a full gallon of water before bedtime. I drank a full gallon of water before bedtime. They sound really, really simple and silly. However, like, just doing what you say for yourself builds that muscle. And that the other thing is, if you have something that's terrifying you, set a timer. 15 minutes, no more. So for instance, let's just say that you've been avoiding doing your taxes and you're terrified. You set a timer for 15 minutes and you sit down, you do your taxes. And the reason why you do 15 minutes is because anything that you get done in 15 minutes is gravy. And then you never have to, you don't, it's not that never, but after 15 minutes, you get to give yourself a break. Do things in small chunks so it feels safe. If you just say, I'm going to do my taxes until they're done, and that's open-ended, and that could be 6 hours, all you're going to do is go into a shame cycle about how you don't know how to do math and you're stupid and you should have had more write-offs and why didn't I earn more money and blah, blah, blah. Right? That's just going to actually cause more stress. So instead, create little safety parameters for yourself by setting a timer, 10, 12 minutes. And that's, maybe 15 minutes max. Like, this is all I can handle. And once I finish this, I'm going to give myself a little break. Create safety for yourself emotionally, create safety for yourself physically. And then once you've established safety, the next area that you need to move into is elimination. Elimination of people, elimination of food, elimination of space, junk, whatever it is that's causing you physical duress and emotional duress, you have to eliminate it. And those are the 2 steps I'm going to give you right now, because those are already too much for somebody to take along. There's a couple more steps. Once you do the elimination and you identify, like, if you're doing really well, then you can start to reintroduce things, or you can still start to build better boundaries. But if you can just create safety and then start to do elimination, you will already see leaps and bounds, healing in your mind, your body, your spirit. Joy will start to come back. And you'll feel like you're bouncing. You'll feel like, oh my gosh, I'm no longer burned out. Like, I'm actually bouncing back.
Awesome. That's great advice. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming in.
My pleasure.
Sharing, because like I said, this has been eye-opening and very educational for me. So I thank you for coming and sharing this.
You're welcome. I hope that you find a little bit of peace for yourself too, and a little bit of safety.
Oh yeah.
I want you to report back to me, actually.
Oh, I will, because that was the missing piece for me is, I need to create safety. I haven't done that.
Mm-hmm.
So how can people connect with you? I know you said you had your podcast. So
Absolutely. Yeah. So I have a podcast called The BS We Feed Ourselves. We focus specifically on, like I said, clearing the BS out of your mind and off of your plate so that we can heal, specifically from burnout and autoimmune issues. I specifically talk to women because we feed ourselves the most BS. And the other way that you can reach out on social media, I'm Shawna Bigby-Davis, Shawna spelled with a W. Shawna Bigby-Davis. And you can find me in all the social media places. And then I'm also launching a new AI-based coach, which will be released in 2 months, actually. Her name is Nomi, and she's going to deliver you daily habit stacking wellness tips based on your level of burnout in the time frame that you need. So if you've got less than 5 minutes, that's what she breaks it down for you. If you've got up to 30 minutes, that's what she gives to you. So Nomi is going to be launching, like I said, in 2 months.
Oh, awesome. And interesting for sure. So
yeah. As women, I just want to say real quick, as women, a lot of times we're maxed out, we're exhausted, and there's these little cracks that are starting to show up. And that's where we need to heal. But a lot of women are afraid of healing, again, going back to that feeling of like unknown. So what they do is they try to shove the healing into these tiny little cracks.
Mm.
right? So it's time to maybe rethink the healing doesn't just fit into the cracks of your day. Maybe healing should be part of your day as part of your routine.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
Resonates.
Yeah, it just hit me. It hit me where it was supposed to hit me. So yeah. Well, thank you for all the gems you dropped. And just ending the episode on that note is just, yeah. So once again, thank you for coming and sharing, and I will definitely keep you posted.
Thank you. Well, you are a light, and I appreciate you and this podcast and all that you're doing, because the world needs you and it needs healers like you.
Thank you. All right. I will talk to you guys on the next episode. Thanks for listening.